Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week, the one show where you don't have to worry about being judgmental about anything because we do it all for you. Let me introduce you to our fabulous panel. Alex Phillips is here today, Peter Bleksley is here as well, Rebecca Twomey and Stephen Allen. Welcome to all of you. Alex, tell us, what's your first plank of the week?
The prisons are full to bursting, so let's release all the criminals and put people in there who've done some mean tweets instead.
Yes. It's a great idea, that, isn't it?
Brilliant idea.
Because apparently what they've also learned is that having set some of these people free already, they've realised they have to bring quite a lot of them back in because they've then breached their parole by either becoming completely homeless or committing another crime. Right. They've got nowhere else to live.
In Nottinghamshire, 1 in 4 people have been early released already having to go back inside because they've just got straight back into the world of crime.
Exactly, as you might expect. You know, we were doing a thing on one of my shows this week and I discovered, I didn't know this, you probably did, that in Afghanistan they've got a Ministry of Virtue for the Taliban because they happen to have come out and said that, you know, men who can't grow a beard can't be in the Taliban, basically, which seems a bit discriminatory. But I think we're getting to that stage here with this government. They're going to open a Ministry of Virtue, aren't they? So they can do all their virtue signalling all at the same time.
I think that's been quietly going on for a long time, hasn't it? But
it has.
No, there are sort of a hop, skip and a jump from actually setting it up, giving it a building on Whitehall, staffing it with people with rainbow lanyards. Yeah,
the thing that annoys me so much, though, is the number of people in this country who keep applauding the fact that these people are being locked up. That people like that woman in Cheshire who's been sentenced to 15 months in prison, who did post a rather stupid thing on Facebook but immediately more or less deleted it.
Yeah,
and she's going inside for longer than some paedophiles have been given sentences for.
Yeah, including the paedophile who supplied Hugh Edwards with all his revolting images. Didn't go to jail.
No, amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, what I don't get is, you know, when everyone's talking about all these horrible things happening, people getting stabbed up on the street every 5 seconds in all parts of the United Kingdom now, little girls getting sexually assaulted on Bournemouth Beach.
Yeah.
Then the government comes up with this scheme of, I know, if you've got a zombie knife, hand it in, we'll give you a tenner.
Give you a tenner.
And I'm like, how about you look at the social media platforms where this stuff is being exchanged and sold? Because that isn't really on X, right? When people want to buy their, you know, gummies and
I haven't been offered one on X,
spice and their zombie knives and their, you know, and they want the sort of, I don't know, groom children. They're not really doing it in the open forum of the sort of national conversation. They're going into the dark corners of every other social media platform. So I'm like, that would be a good place to start, wouldn't it? But oh no, let's go after the people who are talking about stuff instead.
Yeah, people complaining about people being stabbed is far more dangerous than people being stabbed, which seems to be the view that they're now taking.
And yet, the British Police Service were very quickly able to mobilise 6,000 police officers to stop the rioting, which they had to do.
Right.
The Crown Prosecution Service cranks into action really, really quickly. The courts, who we've heard didn't have enough court time and have got a backlog of tens of thousands
and who never
cases.
normally even bother sitting over the summer months, do they?
And now they do, and they'll sit 24 hours a day if you want them to. And, of course, all those prisons that were full suddenly have got places. So the criminal justice system, in all its guises, can kick into action and should kick into action to properly tackle knife crime, to properly tackle the plague of shoplifting, and to properly tackle all of the crimes against women, from harassment to too many murders. Will they?
Also, what I want to know is when it was the riot in Hare Hills, which is the first one, right? That was the blue touch paper, because all the other yobbos saw that and thought, that looks like fun, I'm going to do that next weekend. When that one happened and people were lobbing fridges at police cars and setting buses on fire, I didn't see the sort of, you know, the judge judification of justice happen after that.
No.
The telly trials.
In fact, quite the reverse, because the reason for that riot was that the family at the centre of it had one of their children removed by social services, and social services gave the child back on the grounds that they wanted to stop the rioting that way.
4 people charged so far, and a number of others under investigation, apparently. Just 4.
What's confusing about the Labour Party, of course, and the new Labour government is that up until the time they were in government, they used to say that there wasn't any point in locking people up. In fact, they said we locked too many people up. In fact, they've hired a bloke called James Timpson, right, to be their special advisor on prisons. Here's what he says.
85,000 people in prison. It's going to go up to 100,000 pretty soon. A third of them should definitely be there. There's another third in the middle which probably shouldn't be there, but they need some other kind of state support. A lot of them have got massive mental health issues. They've been in prison, in and out of prison all their lives. And then there's another third, and there's a large proportion of women prison is a disaster for them.
So he's advising the government, right? But he doesn't think anybody should go to prison.
He's a minister.
Yeah.
He's a minister. Now, if you want a key cut or you want your shoes repaired, right, James Simpson is probably the man for you, right?
Does passport pictures too.
Yeah, and he's done some good work in employing ex-offenders.
Yes.
But by crikey, has he gone from I employ ex-offenders, aren't I a lovely fella, which he might possibly be, into this government speak mouthpiece very, very quickly.
I've also been very troubled, Steve, by the fact that Simpson, who hires all these crooks and burglars and people, and he gives them the one job that you don't want them to have, which is cutting keys. So, like, you go in with your keys and go, can you get me a copy of that? And he's going, yeah, I'll make 2 copies. I'll keep one. Yeah. I'll give one to you.
And then you get burgled. They send the police round. They find some footprints. They're new leather. You can't even match them to their old shoes. Right. They know how to do the cobbling as well, don't they?
Exactly.
I think this guy's going to have to employ, give it about a year and a half, he's going to have to hire a lot of people who do online posts, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because he employs people who've been in prison. You get your keys cut, but they'll say something mean to you at the same time.
Yes.
To think this through.
With this release of all these prisoners, this sudden influx, what they were saying is, they'll be under surveillance, there'll be a curfew, they'll be tagged.
Right.
But what about online crime? I think it's nearly 7.7 million cybercrimes are committed.
Right.
And are they going to be watching what they're doing on phones, on the internet, all of this? It's like they're just letting these people completely loose, not just to cut keys, but to commit all kinds of crimes.
They've also created this ridiculous kind of, complication for themselves where they're going to have to be consistent.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to keep locking people up for certain crimes that they're currently locking them up for, which were riot-related, as far as they're concerned. Otherwise, they're going to be accused of being hypocrites, aren't they?
And
they have to lock themselves up.
Yeah.
A daft news item of the week was when all these prisoners get released, the probation service won't be able to cope. What do you mean, won't be able to cope? They can't cope as it is. It's like tragically, sometimes.
It's like the people that keep arguing with me, don't keep talking about immigration being bad for Britain because, if it wasn't for immigration, the NHS wouldn't work. And I'm going, it doesn't work. What are you talking about? But anyway, over to you. You've got the Prime Minister.
Well, there's 2 facts we know, unshakable facts that we know about Sir Keir Starmer. Number 1, he's been in very well-paid jobs for a long time.
Yes.
All those years as DPP, and as an MP and all of that. So he must have a few quid sorted away.
They reckon he's got about 7 million.
There you go.
Yeah.
So he's not short of a pound note.
No.
Secondly, he's often banging on about what a football fan he is.
Yes.
I'm a football fan.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're a proper football fan.
Well, thank you. And of course, he professes to support Arsenal.
Yeah, of course.
Right? In recent months, according to the register of mumped prizes, gifts and other kind of stuff that MPs get, it's been declared that he's received free football tickets on 12 occasions.
Right.
Don't call yourself a football supporter.
No.
If you are a freeloading scrounger who gets in there for nothing, and I bet at half time he doesn't buy a pie and a pint, I bet he has a free prawn sandwich and all that game.
Right.
He's just a freeloader.
Yeah.
He's not a football supporter in any way, shape or form. So don't ever say to me, Starmer, you're a football fan.
Right. And he got a freebie to the Euro finals, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he got a freebie to the Olympics opening ceremony, although he didn't look very happy there because, unlike everybody else, he didn't seem to have a poncho. He was just sitting there in the rain looking like Rishi Sunak on the day that he announced the election.
But he gets free clothes as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
They have got him a poncho or a hat or something in all those freebies.
He got free Taylor Swift tickets as well, 4 of them, and it said to the tune of something like 4,000 quid. I mean, that's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah, as if he can't afford them himself.
I know.
I mean, why do you have to be such a freeloader? When you are the head of the country, shouldn't you set an example and pay for what you enjoy and what you do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of mumping it all the time.
Or share it round. Isn't it quite a left policy that we share the wealth? Everyone's equal and it should be spread out. So if you've got £4,000 worth of Taylor Swift tickets, donate them maybe to a children's hospital or something. Yeah. Isn't that more of,
this is the problem, isn't it? You wonder who's advising these people.
Yeah.
Because that would have been a great thing to do, particularly in the wake of what happened in, Southport.
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot of kids who can't afford to go and see Taylor Swift, and I'm sure it would have been lovely to do something like that. But the trouble is, again, this guy doesn't seem to get the right kind of advice. It was like when Rishi Sunak on the election trail ended up finding himself standing next to the Titanic Museum in Belfast. And everyone's going, what'd you do that for? And of course, inevitably, even the BBC couldn't miss the opportunity to say, do you think your government's a bit like a sinking ship, Prime Minister? And he looked surprised that I'd even asked him.
I think
it's the bloody Titanic Museum.
It would have been like going to the pooch screwing museum.
Yeah.
Thinking, how's this going to go badly?
Yeah, I know. We've actually got a video, I think, of Keir Starmer playing football, because he quite likes the game as well, apparently.
I've been playing football pretty well every week since I was 10 years old, and I'm still playing now every week for 90 minutes. What you do for a living is completely secondary when it comes to playing football on a Sunday. I just love being on a football pitch. And when I'm on that pitch, I'm not leader of the Labour Party. I'm just Keir, one of the teammates.
That's nice, isn't it?
But dear Keir Starmer, that is a very white male pastiche we've just seen there. Where's the diversity in that football team?
And he's in North London. I mean, there should be plenty of diversity.
Playing every week since he's 10 years old, and he's still got the first touch of an elephant.
He's really hopeless, isn't he? And he's not an athletic man, is he? He doesn't look like he knows how to play. And I don't believe that he plays. It'll be the same as his, absolute and utter assertion that I don't work after 6 o'clock on a Friday, which completely got blown out of the water, I think, the first weekend he was doing the job. He clearly doesn't play football once a week. He can't anymore. He's the Prime Minister.
He probably thought, there won't be riots. I'll have some time on a Sunday. But, he hasn't played.
He got that wrong as well.
He hasn't played for a month or so. We know that much, don't we?
No, he got that wrong. Rebecca, over to you.
So my nomination is of England. So it's the Church of England.
Yes.
But they no longer want to be known as the Church. Now, the reason behind this is they've done a bit of, an internal report of what the Church of England would like to be called.
Yes.
And predominantly it came up as communities, worship, nothing to do with an actual church, because their argument is, well, we no longer practice just in a church.
Right.
So it's almost
it's mad, this, isn't it?
It's completely bizarre, because it's a woke way to kind of bring in the youth into the church.
Yeah.
And they have different things like a no shush service, so people can talk freely during Mass. They have a silent disco style worship.
I think
session.
I've seen those in the church. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I'm not going to criticise anyone wanting to worship or have religion, but eroding words really scares me all the time, because if you're trying to attract the younger generation, what about focusing perhaps on the real teachings of the Church of England? Kindness, compassion, empathy, inclusion, all things that I believe the woke, side really want to champion. Why take away the word church?
Right.
Because it's what? An older word? Because it resembles a building or
But they're actually in a
patriarchy or
church,
something?
right? I mean, they are in one. So I don't know how they can get away with not calling it that.
It's going to make it hard to arrange things. Where's the meet? The big building that kind of faces east.
This thing with
the cross on the top.
The cross. It's bonkers. I mean, this is where we've got to, isn't it? Where words don't actually mean anything anymore. Because you can't invent another word for Church of England, can you? It's the Church of England.
The wokerati of England, although there'd be a few candidates for that, wouldn't there?
That's right. Well, it wouldn't be specific enough. You see, the trouble with language is that the language that was invented to be used by intelligent people actually does describe what it's meant to describe. Whereas, this kind of cobblers just doesn't, What's old Justin Welby got to say about it? Let's have a look.
To love one another, as Jesus said, get vaccinated, get boosted. All of us know people who have very strong views about not getting vaccinated. I'm really puzzled by it. I don't understand it, because it seems to me that I'm not a scientist.
He's certainly not a scientist.
I'm not really sure he's a Christian, to be honest.
Do you not remember when Jesus said, get vaccinated?
Yeah.
We all remember
And lo, Jesus came down from the mount and said, have you got your COVID jab?
I know a lovely young fella, and his faith is so important to him. And of course I respect that. And we have conversations about faith and when he's gone to church and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like his life is sort of built and wrapped around that, and that's absolutely fine by me, if that's what works for him. And he says every time Welby opens his mouth, he actually drives people away from the faith that is important to him.
Also, one of the things that they shouldn't have done during COVID was lock the church doors, but that's exactly what they did. So you couldn't even go to church because they might get COVID. I mean, they totally bought it hook, line and sinker and told people to get vaccinated. Ridiculous. Unbelievable. Anyway, Steve, over to you. West Midlands Police. Peter will like this one.
Yeah, it's a religious theme one. This is Isabel Vaughan-Spruce. She won £13,000 in compensation after she was wrongfully arrested by West Midlands Police because she was silent praying in an exclusion zone near an abortion clinic.
Right.
And normally, I would say, I don't agree with her point of view, but I would defend her right to say it.
Yeah.
She wasn't even saying it. Imagine people would disagree with you quietly in their own head. I'll take that as a win. It's going to make my life a lot less stressful.
I presume they took the view that because she was standing there, she must have a particular view, but it's a bit of a dangerous assumption to make, isn't it?
Well, I suppose. I mean, she did say she was just praying on the inside of her head, which actually is protected. It's a Human Rights Act, 98, so, we all have the ECHR here, so I'm sure we're in favour of that one. But because of that, they've now had to pay her this money. I was going to say these prayers didn't seem to help much, but if at some point I imagine she prayed for the arrests to go away...
Right.
They did.
What if you prayed for some money to come from the West Midlands Police? I mean, I think we've got a video of the actual arrest happening. Let's have a look.
You're under arrest on suspicion of failing to comply with the Public Spaces Protection Order, which is under the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014. Now, of course, you do not have to say anything. It may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later on in court, anything you do say may be given evidence.
She said something in her head.
Antisocial.
You don't have to say anything.
It's really antisocial.
But if you do say anything, we might have to find a mind reader to kind of figure out what it is that you actually thought to say. This will be the next thing, actually. You'll get Sir Mark Rowley, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, hiring some kind of mind reader.
There is a worry that this isn't going to be banned, because at the moment she won the case, but there are some suspicions that Labour might want to ban silent prayer. And the thing is, you can't, because it's silent. If someone says, will you just pray in silently in your head? And you go, nope. You get away with it, don't you? As long as you don't do the handsy thing, you absolutely get away with it.
While you've been discussing this story, I have been silently praying in my head. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. None of you know what I was praying for.
No.
But Bill Gates does, because I had a COVID jab once.
There you go. Very well done. But this is the thing. I mean, the police now, and we talk about this all the time, Peter, are doing all sorts of jobs that they shouldn't be doing. The idea that this guy's standing there telling this woman he's arresting her for something that's in her mind, not even in his mind. How can you arrest somebody for something they can't see?
Actually just gone up to her and said, you're standing there and sort of, silently praying in your head, probably Christian prayers. Would you mind going over there and shout jihad and for the river to the sea instead?
Yeah, because that's okay.
Because that's all right.
That's fine.
Get on with that stuff.
Not a problem.
And in fact, I've got a Palestine flag in the boot.
Absolutely unbelievable. Coming up, we've got more to do. I'm going to give you my first one. We've got another representative of the Labour government, funnily enough. Well, actually, two representatives of the Labour government. They just can't stay away. Labour are going to win this hands down, no matter who ends up being the plank of the week. We'll have more coming up after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It's my turn now to give you my first nomination, and it is our esteemed Foreign Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, one Mr. David Lammy. Now, a lot of people thought at the time when the cabinet was being discussed, they can't give it to Lammy. They were like, no, they're going to bring in somebody else who's been a bit more. There was one time talk of Peter Mandelson being brought back into government because he would have the necessary kind of, diplomatic skills. Because David Lammy, of course, doesn't really have any skills at all. And in fact, we're going to start off today with one of the arguments he's had. He's had many arguments with many people on TV. Have a look at this one. This is when he claimed that loads of people died in the Second World War fighting for the European Union.
1 million Indians died fighting for us.
That's right.
They fought for the European project, and they're not now going to vote on the basis of whether Granny can come over for a wedding.
Did you just say that they fought for the European project?
They fought for the European
Britain to get rid of a European dictator who was murdering and killing people. They didn't fight for the European Union. They didn't fight for the European Economic Community. That's a complete perversion of history and what they were fighting for.
I mean, it's hard to believe, isn't it?
I love the fact that actually, in the Second World War, it's all about Germany not running everything and everything not becoming one giant empire.
Right.
And then in his mind, that's actually what they were fighting for.
Yes, exactly right. And it turns out that David Lammy there was talking to Stephen Wolfe, who you know is a former MEP as well. And of course, he was so obsessed with the European Union that he started to kind of just invent stuff and come out with things which were never true. And then after saying that 1 million Indians died, he then said they won't be voting to leave the European Union. Well, they won't be voting at all because they're dead, aren't they? Sorry.
And they were all buried with blue flags with gold stars.
Yeah, of course.
Draped over their coffins. Because that's what they fought for.
I mean, that was in the days when there was
1943.
Proper sort of European derangement syndrome coming from the likes of David Lammy. But of course, the reason I put him in this week, is because he decided in his wisdom to go to the Middle East to see if he could solve the Middle East peace process and kind of, discuss have a ceasefire. But unfortunately, the peace talks are actually going on in Qatar. He went to Israel, where the peace talks aren't. And he was also then snubbed by Benjamin Netanyahu, who refused to see him on the grounds that David Lammy, a couple of weeks earlier, had said that Netanyahu should actually be paraded in front of the International Criminal Court, and if he came to Britain, we should arrest him. I mean, this is a guy who's meant to be a diplomat.
I mean, this is probably why he didn't want the meeting. He thought he was getting arrested. This guy turn up with cuffs.
Right.
No one's going to put that into the Google Calendar, are they?
Then, though, to make matters worse, when he met with some Israeli diplomats, he was wearing a very nice little pin on his lapel, which was in sympathy with the hostages who had been taken by, Hamas, and who was still, as we know, sitting underneath the tunnels underneath Gaza. But then, when he went to meet the Palestinian representatives, he took it off. Yeah. I mean, you're just going, what are you thinking? Do you think nobody's going to notice?
It's ridiculous. It's so standard of Labour manifesto, though, isn't it? We want peace.
Yeah.
Or we're not quite sure how to execute that thing. We're just going to sort of say it, hope for the best, and then do ridiculous things. Removing that pin is so symbolic, and then being surprised that you're rebuffed when you ask for a meeting. It's like, which way does he want to go?
Right. They have a thing where they sort of wore a poppy, didn't wear a poppy, wore a poppy, didn't
Keir
wear a
Starmer
poppy.
did that. Yeah, he took the poppy off when he was addressing the Muslim community.
We dedicate a whole month to, I don't know, pride and all the rest of it, when you could just do a day saying, how about we just be nice to everybody? We have a whole month, which is now turned into a jamboree of people dressed as dogs crawling on the floor and Lord knows what else. And then we get basically 1 hour, once a year, to remember millions of people who died for this country in peace.
Right, and which David Lammy thinks died fighting for the European project.
But they're all badge of the week, this lot, aren't they?
Yeah.
Do you notice they'll wear whatever lapel badge they think is going to curry them favour with a particular audience at a particular time.
Yeah.
And
and you can't just keep switching badges either.
No.
They should fake it. Do you know what I mean? Taking the badge off is obvious, but pretending, do you know, it's a bit hot. Can you just hold my jacket while I go and do this meeting? You get away with it.
There are ways around that, although I'm sure eagle-eyed journalists might pick up on it. But that's my favourite moment, I think, of all of David Lammy's various faux pas, and you may have all seen this already, was when he appeared on Celebrity Mastermind once. I don't know if you've seen this is great. Have a look.
I love this.
2 minutes starting now. What was the married name of the scientists Marie and Pierre who won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1903 for their research into radiation?
Antoinette.
Curie. Which American military award is given to those who are wounded in action and bears the inscription for military merit on the reverse?
Pass.
Who acceded to the English throne at the age of 9 on the death of his father Henry VIII in 1547?
Henry VII.
Edward VI.
There are no wrong answers.
There's more of
That's close.
It's one of the greatest clips of all time.
I'm sorry I haven't played the whole 2 minutes.
I know.
Because all of it is absolute comedy genius.
The only things he doesn't get wrong are the ones he passes on. He gets everything wrong. It's incredible. How can you have Marie Antoinette as a scientist? I mean, I know he's not a scientist.
So in the same
Henry
week...
Henry VIII, unless you are a time traveller, is succeeded by Henry VII.
Oh my God, so good.
In the same week that Starmer's freeloading got exposed, Lammy's earning of tens upon tens of thousands of pounds from a radio station was also revealed. Well, going back a few months, I thought, I'm going to have a listen to this, right? I've got to hear what Lammy is like as a radio presenter.
Yes.
So I tuned in, foolishly, and for about 3 or 4 minutes, I listened to him, and that was more than I could stomach forever and a day. He is such an appalling speaker. It was utterly unlistenable.
Yeah.
Turned off, never to be repeated.
No.
Unfortunately, now he's in the government. He won't have his radio gig.
But how's he going to go when he goes, if Donald Trump wins the election, which is still pretty likely to happen, what's going to happen when he goes to visit him? Presumably he will be snubbed as well because he's called him a Nazi, called him a narcissist, called him a xenophobe, called him a racist, a rapist. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Great, thanks, Dave. You can find any other, world leaders that you want to insult while we're trying to do trade deals with them. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah. Anyway, Labour are going to get a real kicking this week, by the looks of it. Over to you,
Yeah, my
Alex.
second nomination is basically the same as my first nomination, really, because it's the Home Office and it's Yvette Cooper again. And don't you worry about all
Mrs.
the
Ed
horrible...
Balls, surely.
Mrs. Ed Balls. Yeah. Everything that's going on against women and girls and the violence and the stabbings and the sexual assaults and no one's safe getting on public transport and they're being groped walking down the street and all those horror stories we read about day in, day out and, frankly, experience, right? Mm-hmm. But don't worry, because Yvette Cooper's got the solution.
Yes.
She's going to put into hate crime law misogyny.
Yeah, how does this work, right?
I don't know.
Who defines misogyny?
Well, so this is it. Well, who defines it? What is it? I mean, look, if you're sort of like harassing someone, assaulting someone, you know, intimidating someone, that's kind of covered by crime law anyway.
Criminal acts, yes.
But then I was there thinking, because they also want to get Islamophobia in there, don't they? They've been chomping at the bit to get that one into a hate crime law. Basically, you know, let's get some blasphemy law on behalf of the Muslim Brotherhood into the statute books.
Yes.
And I was there thinking, hold on a minute, because, you know, this station did a big report into a load of, you know, bonkers, beardy weirdos doing their sort of mad rantings in mosques and putting them on YouTube. And we've reported these people to the police and said, look, they have been saying these awful things in their, you know...
Quite inciting riots.
Really awful things. And we've seen plenty of evidence of, you know, what some of these men think of women. And some of the things that they say about women. You know, let's have some concubines and some slaves and women aren't worth anything and they shouldn't have their faces out in public and don't leave the house without them. Sounds kind of misogynistic. And I'm like, So if I turn around and go, now we've got misogyny hate crime law, Muslim cleric over there is a misogynist, am I going to be the Islamophobe?
Well, very possibly.
Who goes to prison?
Well, that's right. I think we know the answer to that.
I think
the old Keir.
Yeah.
But I mean, the other problem for me with the Labour government and this misogyny law is that they can't decide what a woman is. They don't know what a woman is. They think a woman can have a penis. So how on earth are they going to come up with a misogyny law?
Oh, it's absolutely nonsense. We don't need any hate crime laws. People always cling to these things thinking, oh, if we don't have hate crime laws, there's going to be so much hate. And it's just an absolute nonsense.
It is.
It's a whole load of legislation. If you got rid of it tomorrow, the world would actually be a better place. We could actually talk about things. We could actually, I don't know, be human beings and have conversations and resolve problems.
And the police wouldn't be wasting their time investigating either.
It all needs to go. The lot of it needs to go. Every last hate crime law should be put in the dustbin of history.
But Peter, what about the police? Because I get the sense that the police, particularly in the form of some of the top chiefs of the police, like Mark Rowley and others, chief constables, actually want these hate crime laws to be brought in so they can go around arresting people in quite sort of non-dangerous scenarios.
Let's remember Just Stop Oil.
Yes.
When those clowns first started laying down in the road and gluing themselves to the road and slow walking and all of that. And Rowley didn't have the bottle to use the existing legislation. He went public saying, we need more legislation. And it was manifestly untrue. They didn't. And eventually, when the whole groundswell of public opinion rose up and said, do something about this, he actually used the laws that I'd been banging on at him to use for a very long time. Interestingly, Starmer's first kind of public speech after the riots had started, he said in that, and I'll forgive you for not picking up on it, he said, we don't need new laws, we'll operate with the ones we've already got. So it'd be very interesting to see if that applies more broadly and Cooper gets put in her place with her.
Well, they've admitted though, haven't they? But he's also said that they want to have a look at, social media. And I don't even know what that means, but it doesn't sound good, Steve, does it?
No, it's the idea of bringing in what's it called? Harmful but legal.
Yes.
Or however they term that.
Well, legal but harmful.
Legal, I mean, it's a weird one to define, because if it's got legal in its title, it's legal then, isn't it? So just crack on. But they want to change it so that if something's perfectly legal but harmful, you'll get done for it. Then, unless you define it, no one will dare say anything. This is the fear of a badly defined law, is that you think, oh, better not do that in case I'm breaking it.
But the solution is always, it's a criminal thing. Misogyny, let's make it a criminal thing, we can arrest people and then it will stop. There's never any look at saying, OK, misogyny is going to exist whether we like it or not. You can't police thought, like as you were saying earlier. And I believe in the freedom of speech. I don't like misogyny, obviously, but I will defend someone's right to have those opinions.
Yeah, there's lots of horrible things that get said.
But we don't teach debate, we don't teach critical thinking, we don't teach people, and I think sometimes women as well, to stand up for themselves and say, that's misogynistic, I don't like that.
This is what I was talking about earlier, which is going against actual crime and then chat. And so people can say what the hell they like about anything and anyone. And frankly, the people who most deserve to have some hate crime law protecting them, frankly, are sort of white working class Brexiteers. They're the ones who are really despised in this country. But you can get rid of all of that, because whether someone is gay or straight or Asian or whatever, if you're attacking someone, and if you're threatening someone, then that's a crime already. It doesn't matter all the rest of that stuff. But we go after conversation when it comes to protecting women, I don't know. How about you turn off those massive porn sites that have 80% of the videos on there are women who are being trafficked, abused, subjugated, spat on? You know, how about you start with that one?
Oh,
That's
yeah, but they can't do that, though,
surely.
because they can't control the internet. And they're
I
going to keep trying to
People
control
always
bits
say
of the
to me,
internet that they'd like to control.
People always say to me, oh, well, you can't do that. That wouldn't work. You can't. I'm like, I've been to UAE. You can.
I think having a nation that largely lives in fear and therefore is too timid to actually have an open conversation in a pub, in a restaurant, wherever you might be, where you express your concerns about illegal immigration. You express your concerns about the rise of Islam in the UK, and you express your concerns about a lack of integration by certain communities. If you're in a pub and you're too scared to have those conversations, then they're going to be very happy.
They are.
Because what they don't want is people having broad, open, lawful, reasonable conversations where concerns are expressed.
But it takes us back to the COVID years, doesn't it? Do you remember when Priti Patel, who's meant to be a Conservative, was telling people to shop their neighbours? Make sure you tell us and get the police round if they've had a couple of cups of tea with some people they shouldn't have had.
Yeah, have you noticed
you kind of people loved it, though. People loved
They did well.
You know, like grassing people up.
They love it. Have you noticed the latest thing? I don't know if it's happening to any of you guys, but, you know, if I stick something up on Twitter, somewhere in the comments, someone's going to put, at Met Police, she should be arrested.
Oh,
They love it now. It's like the latest thing. It's like, go get her, feel her collar.
Because, unfortunately, an awful lot of people who don't understand the law now misunderstand it even more than they did before, because now they think it's actually illegal to say all sorts of stuff. And they think they can report you to the police.
But doesn't that suit this Labour government?
It does.
Because the last thing they want is open, honest conversations where people express their concerns freely.
That's what they're saying is, like, don't tweet what you think, otherwise in about 3 years you're working for Timpson's.
Well, exactly.
Also, don't think what you think, especially if it's near an abortion clinic.
And if you think it silently, that's a big problem.
Think it silently, and then you can just get away with it. But I mean, all these tweets being put out by the HM government, you know, think before you post and all this kind of nonsense.
It's really...
And the other bit that I thought was bad, and we should have probably covered this in the justice system a bit, was when they said, you know, these people have been involved in riotous behaviour, you know, we will arrest them, we will charge them, and they will be convicted. And you're going, hang on a minute, you know, they're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. You can't just suddenly start saying that they're all guilty, they're all going to be charged, and they're all going to be convicted. But they seem to have lost their brains,
You would have thought Keir would understand the law. I think he's trained.
He keeps telling us, doesn't he, that he was, you know, the head of the DPP, so I know how to deal with all this.
But suppressing that speech and grassing up your neighbour is straight out of the post-war communist Stasi East German playbook. It's completely their kind of tactic.
I wonder if he
just shut it down.
I wonder if he learned some of that stuff when he was at that workers' camp in Czechoslovakia being run by a sort of Soviet spy.
Who, Starmer?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was at a workers' camp.
You didn't know that Starmer had been at a Czechoslovakian workers' camp being run by a USSR spy in his youth?
No.
Oh, my gosh.
But
now you do.
No, you see, I learned
he couldn't have been there. He's got Sunday football.
And his dad's a tool.
And also, after 6 o'clock on a Friday... I mean, sorry.
Tools that his dad was making.
Unbelievable. Right, over to you, Peter. A bit of Wales for you.
The Welsh government. The Welsh Labour government.
Do they still have a government in Wales?
Well, I think it's not functioning very well. I don't know. I think they've elected a new leader, a lady whose name escapes me, but it appears the lunacy remains consistent.
Yes, right.
Because what they've now turned their attention to is libraries.
Libraries, yeah.
Because you know it's the issue at the forefront of everybody's thinking, isn't it? Everybody's concerned about libraries.
But, you know, years ago, they kept telling us they were shutting all the libraries. I don't think they shut any,
Damn
did
those
they?
books and words. They're so dangerous. They're legal, but they might be harmful.
But now, they're racist. There's racist libraries everywhere. And the Welsh Government has invested £135,000 to rid the libraries of racism. Because we've all walked into a library and been racially abused.
Absolutely right, Well, those books.
So
they're racist.
So they've got to go through their books, and they've issued reams and reams of advice to librarians. Now, I've actually met a librarian or two in my lifetime, and I find them to be studious, learned, and thoughtful people, generally speaking. And quiet. And I'm sure they really don't need this utter drivel to be sent to them by way of a directive, right? But they've got it, and they're investing 135 grand. Be nice if they invested 135 grand in some books.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
But that might be
no,
useful.
you can't do that because they're racist, because they're in English, and that's exclusionary.
Yep.
That means people from other countries who don't speak our language can read them, so they're racist.
Right. I mean, the problem as well for the Welsh is that everything that gets printed in Wales has to be printed in English and Welsh, so it costs twice as much money as it does everywhere else.
I used to live in Wales, and you'd get some sort of council tax bill, and it would be like a mini Bible.
Right.
There's so many, all the Welsh and English put together.
Well, it's by law, isn't it? By the Welsh Language Act, everything has to be in 2 languages, including all the road signs, including the police.
When it's the road signs, but the word's the same, so it's just written twice.
Yeah,
you could have saved yourself some font there.
You could have, yeah. And I mean, every single document produced by the Welsh Assembly, which is not called the Welsh Assembly anymore, it's now called the Senedd, because apparently that makes it sound more important. And at one point, I actually said they wanted to double the size of it. And even the Welsh were going, sorry, we're not having that. We don't need twice as many of you than we got already.
But the lunacy of some of these directives are, if you're going to hold a meeting for people, and you happen to hold it in a racist building...
Yes.
Right? Because there's racist buildings everywhere, aren't there? You know what I mean? I walk past buildings shouting out at people all the time. Then what you've got to do is you have to kind of get over that by, apologising for the racist building and explaining why you're there.
Yes.
But also, and this is like just classical, contradictory, hypocritical tripe, they said that what you can do to prove that you're not racist is perhaps use cultural stereotypes.
Oh, yeah.
Can you Adam and Eve it, right?
What do they mean by that?
Yeah,
like a 70s sitcom.
Use cultural stereotypes. So, say, for example, you're appealing to an African audience, for example, of African people that are now settled in Wales and want to come to a library, maybe get some bongo drums. That'll make them feel a bit more at home, won't it? Right?
Crikey.
I mean, what a load of nonsense.
Right.
Cultural stereotypes.
Right.
It's the very thing you try and break down.
Right.
Also,
isn't there a risk if you say to people that these buildings are racist, won't it attract the racists who'll go, oh, look, there's a racist building over there, let's go over there.
Yeah.
Because that'll be fun. That'll be great.
Let's put a sign up that says racist and then racist in Welsh, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Why is it always that we want to completely eradicate history?
I'm going to look it up.
It's like we never want to learn from the past. They couldn't say this building is history and talk to people about it. We never want to talk and discuss the bad things about history, but we don't want to ever learn.
Anyone cares. That's the point. It's a blimmin' building with books in it.
But some people do care, and that's okay.
But they've got to care. There's one person somewhere who's paid like 120 grand a year to care, so that's how they earn their money. So then they have to tell everyone else to care. When everyone was obliviously just walking past said racist building without ever thinking whether it was racist or not. But no one cares.
Have they
about
actually
this
explained
stuff.
why they think it's racist, the building?
No, they didn't. But
they don't bother to do that.
No, the person who's hiring the building, it's their responsibility to discover whether it's a racist building or not.
So they can do a study.
And then
I
therefore,
can tell you, by the way, what the Welsh word is for racism. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's Hiliaeth. Hiliaeth. Hiliaeth.
There you go. Anyway, I quite like the cultural stereotypes bit because I put the Welsh Libraries on notice now that I'm going to come down there, and they've got to appeal to my cultural stereotypes. So I'm expecting 10 pints of lager and a packet of fags the minute I walk through that library.
Brilliant. That'd be great. And why not? You'd smoke in there if they're racist.
I'll go outside, obviously.
Oh, will you?
Okay.
Fair enough. Brilliant. Right, coming back, Rebecca is going to have Newcastle University for us. And Harry and Meghan make a return. They haven't been on for a while. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. Rebecca, Newcastle University, what have you got for us?
Well, I'm afraid I can't do the accent. I wish I could. But...
Neither could Mike, to be fair.
Well, the diversity chiefs, our favourite people at Newcastle University, have decided that staff and students should not use the terminology pets.
Pets, yes.
The reason being is that apparently it's sexist, it's not appropriate.
Pets.
It's, eroding basically the language, but that's in this 7-page booklet. There's lots of ways that you should talk to each other, and it should be friends and colleagues. I'm interested to know how they feel about mates, because I think that's generally a term men generally use towards each other. Well, could that be deemed as sexist as well? Should we start eroding that? Things like darling, love, all these things apparently women are so offended by that you should not call anyone
Except
those
they're
things.
not, are they?
Well, I don't think they are because it's a term of endearment.
Pet, I think also pet. It's actually, I think, gender neutral because whenever I've been to the northeast of England, you know, everybody calls everybody pet. You know, girls call boys pet, but boys call girls
But
pet.
they're deciding for women. It's kind of, everything goes so backwards, doesn't it? It's like we're telling you that you should be offended by this quite warm, lovely thing about, you know, British culture, you know, for Geordies.
Yeah.
Suddenly we've now got to be upset by someone calling us pet, when really, if you are offended as a woman, you can say to someone, do you mind not calling me pet? Sometimes it irritates me. And then the other person goes, yep, sure, sorry, done. Do you really need a handbook to say how you need to be offended?
I know.
It's actually done as a term of endearment,
Exactly.
basically. And of course, so many of these are regional.
Right.
If you go to Liverpool, for example, you know, people invariably call you lad.
Right.
You know, and there's
Or
others.
la.
There's others around the country. They are very nice, essentially kind of warm, short terms.
But that's the stuff of our communities and
Our
our
culture.
histories and our ancestors
Back to the
and
Welsh
our
libraries.
parents and our grandparents. That's the stuff of Britain.
Yeah.
Let's not throw it in the bloody bin
you know when you're in-
and replace it with a load of mad stuff from abroad.
Well, you know when you're in the north of England, because you pull into a petrol station or something, and if there's a woman in there, she'll call you love.
Yeah.
You know, it's not offensive.
Yeah.
It's not meant to mean anything. It's not any kind of come on. It's just what they call you.
Well, where I'm from in Mansfield, everyone calls everyone duck.
Duck.
Men to men, women to women. And the weird thing is they should tell you that it's regional because I remember like moving away and then calling other people duck. It's a weird thing to be... Yeah.
Where I'm from, everyone's called butt.
No way.
Yeah, B-U-T-T.
What's that? Is that a Gloucester thing?
It's a Forest of Dean. Right butt.
Oh, is it?
Right butt.
See, I've not heard that one.
I like that.
No one's been to the Forest of Dean.
I better
Weird
clarify.
place
They
down
have things like warthogs in the Forest of Dean.
Oh, lots of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Lots of
dangerous
them.
sounding place, that. But
Excuse me, could I just have a moment? I just said I liked butt. I need to clarify that. I'm an happily married man with 3 kids, all right?
It's just not me this time. I'm normally the one.
No ifs.
Each to their own, but I just wanted to clarify
No
that.
ifs and or buts here on the show. Also, what about Auf Wiedersehen Pet? I mean, that was a pretty famous show.
That needs to be cancelled now.
I know, it was in the
So
70s.
offensive.
They might be able to show it at Newcastle University, will they?
What I've learned is you can't speak anymore. Don't say anything because it could be legal but harmful, and especially don't think inside your head.
Yes.
So I think the only way to be, legal and not harmful is just to kill ourselves.
There'll be a riot and then look what
There'd be another riot.
Yeah.
Basically, the whole of the United Kingdom should just be one giant prison.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like Escape from New
And
York.
do you know what? If we did that and built massive walls around
Yeah.
and chicken wire fences and just said this whole island is now prison because we're all legal but harmful, that would actually stop the boats.
It would. It would actually stop the boats. They go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Maybe the Isles of Scilly. You've got Harry and Meghan.
I have indeed.
And I have to say, I'm not sure. I think this is the longest gap since we've had Harry and Meghan. They've sort of given up on them for a while. They were so plankish. They kept winning it. So I think it's the first time they've been on for a while.
All right. Well, they're back. Harry and Meghan did what the newspapers were calling the quasi-royal tour, which now means quasi means not. So I'm learning Latin or something, aren't I? Because it's not a royal tour, is it? So they were told to apologise. So Prince Harry was told to apologise for racism, which I saw that headline and thought there's something going off in that marriage I wasn't ready for. But this is apparently Colombia. They went to Colombia and they were told that Prince Harry should apologise, even though they were colonised by the Spanish.
Right.
So I guess European,
they're all the same.
European royals look the same to the same to everyone. But they should apologise, not for that, for the £1.5 million that it cost in their security.
Yes.
They were only there for a few days. This nation that is economically...
it was 4 days, wasn't it?
Yeah, and so it's a lot of money. They had 3,000 soldiers, police officers, and sniffer dogs. He doesn't even do drugs anymore.
No.
So I don't know. Just save themselves some money, couldn't they?
I mean, this is the thing. He didn't ever look particularly happy while he was there, though, did he? And I mean, people made a great deal out of the fact that they'd been invited, I think, by the vice president of the country, whose name I forget, who's a massive socialist, and she apparently wanted them to come and visit because she'd enjoyed the Netflix programme that they'd made, and so that was the sort of the level of diplomacy at work. But apparently, in normal sort of society, you would expect the Prince Harry figure to sit next to the person who was the dignitary, but in fact it was Mrs. Prince Harry that sat next to her, and he was always sort of a bit further down the table, so he was like even more of a spare than he's ever been in this country.
And during this trip, Meghan came out with the most pathetic statement I think has ever tumbled out of either of their mouths, and that's quite saying something. During some exchange with the dignitary, She said that, yes, our 3-year-old daughter has found her voice.
Oh, yes.
And we're so proud.
Yeah, what did she mean by that? Did she mean she's actually started speaking? Because if you don't speak until you're 3, that doesn't sound like she's too bright, the girl.
She's found her voice. She's clearly campaigning on behalf of women's rights.
At 3.
And equality and all of that. That's surely what it means, isn't it?
Must be. I think we've got a picture of Harry enjoying himself in Colombia. Let's have a look. He just looks so miserable, doesn't he?
I think the intention with them, I believe, no one's going to like me saying this, I think the intention is sometimes right with them, it's just always so misplaced. But why go to Colombia? And I believe the things they were speaking about were online, bullying, lots of different things. Nothing really to do with Colombians and the issues they must much face.
Right. Why go to Colombia?
So,
why does anybody go to Colombia?
Yeah, it's very cheap there, apparently.
If they're on this, charity mission to do good in the world, why are they talking about things that aren't even relevant, as far as I imagine, to Colombians?
Exactly.
What are they actually doing for the Colombian people other than wasting a phenomenal amount of money on their
Also, loads of people who were in Colombia were sort of puzzled as to who they even were, because they never actually saw them, because they were sort of ushered from one, a fleet of cars into a building, into another fleet of cars, into another building. They were never actually out and about, so nobody saw them because he's, too scared to be out in public. And I guess this is why he keeps wanting more money to cover his trips to Britain, because he now wants 3,000 soldiers everywhere he goes to safeguard it.
Rebecca.
Yes.
They're Californians. And they went to Colombia. We know what they're doing for the Colombian people.
I mean, anyway, coming up next, we're going to decide who should be the Plank of the Week, but also I've got one more nomination, and amazingly, it's from the Labour government again. Right, so, I think this might be the winner this week, actually. And I know whenever I say that, people always groan. Oh, you can't give yourself the winner. But it's Louise Haigh, who is the Secretary of State for Transport. This is a woman who only this week has actually made things even worse, but we'll come back to that because she wants to bang on about 20-mile-an-hour neighbourhoods. But this is a woman who did the incredible job of negotiating with ASLEF, the train drivers' union, and agreeing to give them 15% of a pay rise without any sort of strings attached. The government before that, the Tory government, have been trying to get them to stop the Spanish practices that they practice, which includes things like if your boss comes and talks to you while you're in your break, you have to start the break again. So if you've done 5 minutes, you take the 5 minutes back and say, you shouldn't have said hello to me, because now, brother, we might have to walk out. Also, they count the time that they walk from one end of the train to the other as part of their sort of, shift time. And there's all sorts of weird stuff going on. But the most ridiculous thing that they did was, after accepting this 15% pay rise, they waited about 10 hours and then they rang her back and said, oh, by the way, we're going out on strike again from every weekend from now until Christmas. And you just go, well, how bad do you have to be at negotiating to not only not get anything from them, but to not even stop them from striking while having given them a load more money, which I think is going to cost something in the order of, several £billion by the time they finish paying for it.
ASLEF have completely outflanked this woman.
I don't think it was that difficult.
Yeah, when you look at the small print, right, this 15% is paid over 3 years, so it works out about 5% a year. But of course...
Well, it now means they're on 81,000 for a 4-day week.
Yeah, but you imagine, so they're on that 100% of what they're on now. They get 105%. So then when the next 5% gets paid, it's actually 5% of 105%.
Yes.
And then, of course, the last year of the deal will be 5% of 110% of what they're on now.
Yes.
So when you kind of compound it, it's a very, very decent deal.
It gets better
because they've negotiated.
Because in addition to that, then, of course, Mick Lynch, our friend from the RMT, went, hello, and it wouldn't surprise me if Mick Lynch and Mick Whelan had cooked this up between them. Whelan's the head of ASLEF. Mick Lynch went, that's a good pay rise. He said, I would expect my members to also get that pay rise. So he had a meeting with them this week, a few days after ASLEF's deal was done, and he now wants the same deal. Otherwise, they're going to go out on strike. So this is this merry-go-round of stuff. And then the final union, which I think looks after the people that do the ticketing and all the rest of it, they've also had talks with her, because they're all just going, well, we want it now. And it's the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen, isn't it?
Who gets paid more to not work? This is what isn't the average 70 grand now for a train driver? But if they could run it on time, no one else in any other industry if a service isn't efficient, do you earn more money? And who's going to pay for that pay rise? Is it everyone that buys their train ticket? Because now it's about 300 quid, isn't it, to go from London to Manchester?
There's not enough money in the system, so it's the taxpayer.
Yeah, so
basically.
we have to pay.
Yeah.
We have, as a taxpayer, and as you know, when we buy our tickets as well, have to cover this cost. Surely,
yeah, we do.
But we're paying for a worse service.
Exactly.
That's
the genius of the deal that Louise Haigh has done.
But if you measure it per minute on the train, the more it's delayed, the more you get value for money.
Yeah.
You're sitting there longer, aren't you?
You're sitting down, are you?
Yeah.
You get a seat.
Oh, that's true. You're standing there longer.
We've got a little clip of Mick Lynch being his usual affable self.
Halfway through these negotiations, while they were ongoing, the unions came out onto the street and gave an impromptu press conference, I mean, TV footage, saying that the strike was going to continue.
OK, let's just pause. Hang on.
I mean, it's on video.
Now, Mick Lynch, excuse me.
You sounded like Jimmy Nail. That song.
That's a lie. Yeah, absolutely right. Well, I suppose, the trouble is we've got so many people from Labour. We've got Keir Starmer, we've got the Ministry of Justice, we've got Louise Haigh, we've got Yvette Cooper, and we've got David Lammy.
Lammy.
You're going with Lammy. Oh, I like
He's
that.
I think
Lammy as well.
I think Lammy, yeah. I think it might have to be Lammy, because, I mean, it was his week as well. Going all the way to Israel just to be snubbed.
I want to see the mastermind thing again. I just really like it.
I would like to see that again. Are we allowed to see that again?
I like it
No,
so much.
apparently not.
Oh.
Chuck won't
I'm going to watch it as soon as filming's ended.
Just watch it on YouTube.
The whole thing.
It's hilarious. The whole thing is brilliant. Yeah, got to be done. David Lammy, you are the plank of the week. Absolute plank. There's nothing worse than that, is it? Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Steve. We'll be back same time next week with more plank.